second episode of Off the Cuff on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. My name is Mike Hack. Hope you guys all enjoyed Saturday night and the return of the UFC 246, and the triumphant return of Conor McGregor and everything else that transpired in Las Vegas over the weekend. We have a lot to discuss, so let us introduce the rest of the guys sitting in the virtual barbershop here. First, Mr. Craig Allen. I hope you're not sick of me yet.
Mike, I am not sick of you. We just finished taping a great episode of Between the Links. I think we had a great guest. People are really going to enjoy that. And another busy week of MMA. Of course, we have Bellator and the UFC coming up later on this week. So all sorts of stuff to go around.
Absolutely. Mr. Loudmouth himself, of course, Kyle Steele. How are you, sir, on this fine evening?
I'm doing fantastic. Today I debuted my own show on the network. So be my first time in a while doing a show by myself.
What show is this? I was not aware of said show.
It's just it's aptly named the Kyle Steele Show. I not super creative, so that's where we went with it. It's just it's airing on RTF Sports, much like this show. It airs on Tuesdays. This one airs on Wednesdays. I just recorded that one for the network. So there was a lot to talk about this week, so it was incredibly easy to do. Who knows moving forward?
And from many, 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 many outlets, Mr. Drake Riggs, who's going to be grinding it out this week on the MMA scene, traveling a little bit. Is that correct?
That is correct. I will be down in Los Angeles. It's somewhat sunny, Los Angeles. It's always sunny down there this time of year and all that. But yeah, leaving tomorrow. Going to be on the grind. Can't wait and excited to be here. Had to get the show in before I left.
Absolutely. So let's get right into this thing. Conor McGregor is back. He did the damn thing on Saturday night. Took him 40 seconds to finish Donald Cerrone. He didn't take a single strike for as long as the fight lasted. My question for you, Craig, we're going to start with you. Could this return have gone any better? Is there anything else he could have done to make it even better than it was on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be radio if I just had food in my mouth. Could it have been more perfect? No. I mean, you get a finish like that. Could it have been more perfect if it was another knock him out, drag him out type of fight like he had with Nate Diaz in the first one or even the second one? Yeah, maybe, but just the fact that you get a finish like that, there's so much buzz following that as well. I mean, it's kind of the talk of the town today. It was the talk over the weekend, and it made you forget about how lackluster the card was up until that point. Yeah, there was some pretty good fights, but your co-main event was a real sleeper, and if you were not an MMA fan, if you're a casual MMA fan, I could understand a lot of people tuning out or falling asleep.
Listen, I'm really hoping this works, but I want to have somebody answer the question about Conor for me real quick. So just tell me if this works, if you can hear it.
But they are who we thought they were.
Did that work?
Did
that go through?
Danny Green.
Listen, they were who we thought they were. No, I actually disagree with a little bit of what Craig said about maybe it could have gone better if it was a knock him out, drag him out kind of fight. I think that would have been the worst case scenario. I think there was so much, and I'll explain it. There was so much behind him not taking this fight, right? He should have fought Gagey. So if you fight someone like Cerrone, if you're going to go down against the guy that lost to the guy who was calling you out more so than Cerrone, and the fight that was more interesting to the fans, you got to beat that guy soundly. And that's what he did. So I think had it gone to like a decision, or if he'd have finished him late, I think it would have been like, what the heck? He can't even finish Cowboy right away. Like, what else is he going to do, right? Like, he had to have this type of a performance in order for this fight to make sense to everybody. It could not have really gone any more perfect. Even if he would have landed that first left, right, the one we overreached on, if he lands that and knocks him out there, I think it's worse than this, because then it's like, oh, it was a flash. Right, this is unequivocal skill. There's no way around it.
I mean, yeah, I think Kyle really summed that up perfectly. I'm just kind of surprised still to see that everybody's they're all for the Jorge fight next, which, I mean, I don't necessarily think it makes sense from a purist standpoint, but everybody's all on that now just because I think they've accepted the BMF idea that just having these crazy fun fights. I think people are just starting to forget about logic and all that. But I mean, after such a performance like Conor put on, it's kind of hard not to get so excited and amped up about, the crazy next big thing. Like, who cares about titles? We just want to see something insane, which, you're likely going to get with Masvidal versus McGregor, even though I think you get that with like a Gaethje fight too. But I don't know. Yeah, just it definitely went perfect. We'll see what happens next. Many possibilities. But that's what everybody seems to want now, except for Dana.
Yeah, to me it was perfect. I know many people were hoping he would get on the microphone and just start calling out everybody, calling out Masvidal, calling out Usman, calling out somebody by name, but he didn't do that with Joe Rogan. He did do that and addressed everybody at the post-fight press conference, but didn't really name anybody at all. Like he's an options guy. He likes to weigh his options, and he said it best. A fighter having options, that's the most important thing in this game. So to me, this is an A+ night for Conor. It was even better than he or any of us or the UFC could have asked for, in my opinion. But with every winner, there's got to be a guy who didn't get his hand raised. Donald Cerrone was that guy in the main event. Clearly not how he wanted the fight to turn out. But now we're hearing all the fixed fight crap that we hate to see in here. But before we move on, does anyone want to jump in on this fixed fight BS?
Yeah, it was, dude. Totally was. If I die on that hill, I'll be
I was like, I'll gladly jump in. Yeah, I mean, you can't fake what took place in there. I mean, even if that was the plan to take a dive, Conor didn't realize it was a dive at the very least. So you can't really fake what took place there. I don't think Cowboy he just didn't seem ready for the moment. I mean, it just started with a flash. He's already doesn't do super great against pressure anyway, but I don't think he was really expecting it to go that quick. He just didn't seem like he was ready. But yeah, I don't see what in there would have possibly been fake. I mean,
yeah, I would agree.
With the fixed fight thing, like, sure, there have been some before in MMA. It's happened, but it's really kind of weird situation. Like, the thing I think of always is El Patron, Alberto Del Rio, when he fought Crow Cop. He was supposed to lose that fight. Crow Cop didn't know that, though. He was gonna, it was supposed to be, he was gonna win it no matter what. But also at the same time, he wasn't planning on getting head kicked, knocked out. And I mean, also then you look at, he's also a professional wrestler. Cerrone isn't going in, take any dives. It's absolute nonsense of all people. And then when there are actual fixed fights, there was also I think Dan Severn and Shannon Rich. Dan Severn had one of them where it was just so painfully obvious. You're like, he outweighs this guy so much, but he's like throwing him around a little bit, and it was just kind of, if you've seen that fight, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, no, it's so funny how just the casuals kind of jump on these things who just really don't like Conor that much that they're like, yep, no, this is fucking insane. No way, it doesn't make sense.
If you want to see a fixed fight, all you have to do is go back a month. Go back and watch Fedor and Rampage.
Hey, listen, I might give golf claps for that. I'm 100% on board.
Oh man, we could go off on a rabbit hole tangent with this.
What was the guy who fought? Is Taktarov? Do you know what I'm talking about? Old school UFC. He fought one of his teammates, and it was at like a UFC 6 or UFC 7, and it was the most clear cut like fake fight you're ever going to see. I mean, it's crazy. It lasts like 10 seconds. It's wild.
Maybe they say that between them.
Anthony Machias?
No, I'd have to look. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jerry Bolander. Does he fight Jerry Bolander early in his career? That's for some reason that's jumping out to me. But anyway, if you get a chance to watch that fight, if you can Google it, maybe in the show notes we'll put it. That is a fixed fight, and it is plain as day.
Well, a fight that wasn't fixed was clearly this one, and let's talk about Cerrone for a second, because heading into this fight, I said this many times, this is a win-win for Cerrone. If he won, holy crap, off to the moon, he goes, and if he loses, he's still got all these records, he's the ultimate fighter, pun intended, because the guy fights anyone, anytime, all that stuff, because he's the definition of what like a fighter should be. It's what we look for in a fighter, but man, to go out there and get finished like that in 40 seconds, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow. So, Kyle, let me ask you, I think we all have the utmost respect for Donald Cerrone and what he has done in his career in this sport. So, did this loss on Saturday night, did it tarnish the Cowboy legacy at all? Do you look at Cowboy differently than you did heading into the fight on Saturday?
It was Anthony Macias, by the way. No, I do not. I do not look at him any differently. I think, and Luke Thomas talked about this, and he tweeted out all the names that Cowboys fought over the last year, and it is just murderer's row. When you fight that kind of competition and that short of time, you're going to lose. And again, I think, it was like he had 24 fights in the same time span that Khabib had 12, right? And it's like if Khabib has 24 and Donald has 12, their positions in the UFC might look radically different, right? All of a sudden, Khabib starts having a bunch of losses and Cerrone's not losing really anything because he's not fighting very often. So, yeah, like you're going to lose if you keep doing these fights and keep fighting this level of competition and not taking very much time in between those fights, you're going to lose. So I think for all of us, I think he's kind of who we think, not to quote Dennis Green again, but he's kind of who we think he is at this point. He has started to transition into the kind of resume padding name, but at any point he can still beat the best of the best. He just probably won't. But he's a good name that if you're really wanting to challenge someone or really wanting to get a name under their belt, this is a good guy to fight. The guy, the Mike Perrys of the world should be fighting people like Donald Cerrone as they're coming up and trying to break into the top.
Yeah, I don't really think any less of Cowboy, and I think it kind of shows that we forgot that Conor is good enough to do that kind of thing. I mean, at least a lot of people forgot that. And, shout out to Michael Fidel. He kind of pointed it out in a tweet after the fight, or maybe it was today, either way. And he was saying how, look at the guys that Conor's beaten, how he's beaten them. He's got the one decision win over Diaz in the rematch. That's the only one, though. He's finished everybody else with strikes. So, except for Holloway for most of the run, you know what I'm saying? So it's like we forget that he is an elite guy as much as, a lot of people might not want to say it. And he hasn't, fought exactly the most elite guys that he could in, the past so many fights, aside from like Khabib and Alvarez, I guess. But yeah, I think it just kind of showed more. It's Cerrone. We know that he's older now. He was on a 2-fight losing streak coming in. I feel like it doesn't drop his stock too much. I mean, it definitely doesn't help, obviously, but at the same time, it's like, hey, come on, we've got to remember that this Conor McGregor guy is pretty good, It's like, if you don't want to say it. So that's kind of more what it told me in regards to the Cerrone. Where is he at? Yeah, I don't think there's he's hit the ceiling. I think that's for sure a safe thing to say about him at this point. Can still be competitive. I think that's also the case, but yeah, I think we've seen his best days for sure.
Yeah, I don't think his legacy was necessarily tarnished. I think there were some dings to it, but definitely not tarnished. And I will say, and I don't think this is being discussed enough, the way he handled the loss was absolutely incredible. I mean, no excuses. He took it on the chin. He gave Conor his due. He's very honest about what happened. He knew he was overwhelmed. He said as much. And I think one of the things I like about the sport is when fighters take losses like that and they're honest with themselves and to everybody else. And I thought he did a great job. Craig, what do you think? Do you look at Cowboy any differently or kind of the same?
No, I look at him the same. I mean, it's a shame that Robbie Fox's favorite fighter lost on Saturday night, right? No, all in all, you look at a guy like that and you look at the fights that he's had over the past, let's say, yeah, like Kyle said, the past year, past 2 years, incredible names. I know one of the things that we did mention on Between Links, I wanted to bring it up here just for a little bit of a discussion, but we talked about some possible matchups for Cerrone, maybe a Nate Diaz, maybe an Anthony Pettis. We kind of shaded and faded, if you want to go that way, maybe some young up-and-comer. But, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where he went back down to 155 and he beat Alexander Hernandez. Then he beats Ali Quinta and he's right back up at the top again. So I don't know if maybe they give him a prospect next. But in my eyes, this guy's a record holder, most wins, finishes, all that. And it certainly still holds a lot of water, especially for the hardcore fans.
Before we move on, I had this theory in the back of my mind, and I know others kind of put this out in the universe as well. Conor's performance at the pre-fight press conference, and everyone said it was a really nice thing. They were very respectful, and that's great when that happens. But one of my thoughts coming out of that was, man, this guy is luring Cowboy into this like false sense of security. He's making Cowboy think that this is going to be like a fun sparring match with fireworks. Everybody wins. I win, you win, and all the fans win. But Conor comes out and look to take his head off right away, and the shoulder strikes. He turned it into this gritty, nasty dogfight right away, and Cerrone was completely overwhelmed. Do you think that was Conor's sort of mind game after all? Like he was playing the mental warfare game? Does anybody subscribe to that theory?
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think, Drake?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean,
Devil's advocate.
I would agree more if maybe, he was kind of a dick afterward, but, he did ramp it up when he was talking to Rogan. I think that was just kind of the adrenaline. But I don't know, he was pretty much the same after that, So, yeah, I want to say no.
All right. Well, there you have it.
Alexander Hernandez. Alexander Hernandez was like brash, and he was going to go out. He was going to get a big win, and then look what happened. It fired Cowboy up. But Conor McGregor took the approach that Donald Cerrone did when he fought Yancy Medeiros. Hey, we're buddies. Hug my grandmother. Hold my baby. This is going to be a great fight. And then he just blitzes him to start and beats him in the first round. So, yeah, it was a smart game plan by Conor.
Yeah, if that was the plan, but it could have just been unplanned as well. But we're going to take our first break. We'll be right back with more Off the Cuff right after this. All right, welcome back to Off the Cuff. Thank you for listening and checking out the show, wherever it is you may be listening. So I want to do something a little different here. I want to play Professor, maybe play some high school for this segment before we head into the buy-sell segment. Let's give a letter grade to UFC 246 and talk about maybe some different things. I'm just going to flow this thing and see what happens. Craig, let's start. UFC 246 as a whole. What grade are you giving this event from top to bottom?
You dink, you're teeing me up, and I don't have my tweet up in front of me. I always ask this question every single week. I know. Oh, no, I have it. Okay, so out of 92 votes, 44.6% went with a C. I don't totally agree with them. I will say one thing that bugged me over the broadcast, I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to say this or not later on, so I'm going to say it now. When Holly Holm fought Raquel Pennington and Joe Rogan said Raquel Pennington is in the prime of her career, are you kidding me? You don't have to sell the fight. It's happening right now. That was ridiculous. But other than that, like, you're telling me she's in her prime? Why not sell me another Wolf ticket and tell me that Alexei Oleinik's in the prime of his career and he's got another 72 fights on tap? It was a B. Just because Conor was there, some prospects won and some prospects lost, including Osborne and Barber in some pretty big spots. So, yeah, it's a B overall. It was a good card just because Conor McGregor was there.
Listen, Mike, I don't know how many times we have to tell you here at the network to stop being a dink. But, you just keep being a dink, and I don't know how we're going to get you to stop. I would give it – this seems like a C to me. I mean, this is you can't rely on the main event here, which I did some analysis. If you check out the Kyle Steele show, I did some analysis of 245 versus 246 numbers-wise, and it is phenomenal, the difference in numbers. It is insane, especially given how, highly whatever. But so I understand the McGregor thing, but I just feel like I can't give a letter grade based off of that. You know what I mean? Because the card wasn't that. The card was mostly a shit show, a bunch of fights that are just kind of put together that should have been on fight nights. And this is a big pay-per-view that should have had better quality from the get-go. And then obviously 2 good fights get lopped off the card. So, yeah, this is just a straight C.
Drake.
It needed a co-main.
Drake, you got a B and a C. What's your grade?
Yeah, I saw your tweet, Craig. I voted C on that one, but I'll give it a C plus though. Okay. I'll give it the plus. Yeah, it was. And I got to look at it overall too, not just like the main event gives a boost, but just like overall. So I think it was a pretty solid C plus. There were some crazy moments that happened, obviously in the main event. Oleinik and Green, I thought was kind of crazy how Green was able to survive a scarf hold for maybe 2 minutes straight, like a long time, which is insane, really, when you think about just the experience level. I mean, I tweeted this out too, but I was like, Crow Cop did not survive that move. Mirko Crow Cop. But there's Maurice Green, who has, 10 fights, just survived it against a guy who submitted like 47 people. So it's like, that was insane to me. Anthony Pettis losing, that was so dominantly too for Hera. He's for real. That guy's turned things around. I guess you could say, really, really impressively, I think, on the run he's on. And then, Modafferi and Barber, a lot of people didn't see that coming, even though they should have seen it coming. I tried to tell everybody. And then the nonsense with the doctor, who I thought it was messed up, how he was like, she's got a partially torn ACL, but she's fine. Are you kidding me, man?
His MRI vision?
Yeah, exactly. His X-ray vision, put on the X-ray specs. And then, there were some bad late stoppages too with Dober, but that was a good one for him too. There were a lot of good moments now that I kind of reflect on it. So I think C+ is just about perfect.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the grades are so low here. Like, I'm going to give it a B+. Like, I was almost going to go A-, but just to, like, you know, maybe not give it as much credit. B+, I mean, you have a main card where there's 4 finishes and 5 fights. That's usually a good sign. The prelims are pretty good. The one problem I have is the pacing of the ESPN prelims, especially when you put a fight right off the bat that could end very quickly. And that's what happened there. Drew Dober finishes Nasrat Haqparast super fast. I felt like we waited like 35 minutes for the next fight, and it just lagged. And we had some, like, Askarov and Elliott was a fun fight. Barber and Modafferi was a fun fight. I mean, good Lord. I mean, Kammer, yes, that was on the Fight Pass prelims. But we're talking about the ESPN prelims leading into the main card. I thought the main card was good. I mean, and I know the Holm Pennington fight was bad. It was terrible. But honestly, I think, like, in the pro wrestling world, like, that's before the Royal Rumble, you'd put Holly Holm versus Raquel Pennington before the Royal Rumble. Like, you put Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus the Big Boss Man before the Royal Rumble. Because, like, the people are already up. They're excited. We have 3 finishes in a row. Then you kind of even them out with Holm and Pennington, and then you send them home happy. And that, to me, good. It's good. It's a good formula. The fight was terrible with Holm and Pennington, but it led for an even better moment. The fans are even more into it because Connor won. I don't know if they're geniuses for setting it up that way, but I just don't agree with the C or a C+ there when you have 4 finishes out of 5 fights in the main card. I mean, Holm Pennington is bad.
I'll go B-.
There we go. Thank you, Trey.
Okay, Mike, I'm 25 years old. I don't have this problem. But I know that later in life you might encounter it. So our last UFC event, we had 3 title fights. That's like taking a Cialis and expecting something to happen. You know Conor McGregor's at the start. You're already excited about it. And then you get home in Pennington and everything just flies off the rails. And boom, you got to pop another little blue pill. And in this case, we get excited. We have some good fights. And it kills the vibe in the co-main. Yeah, it might level us out, but you don't need that. You don't need that.
Well, I mean, unless you want to end things with your lady friend in like 2 minutes time, don't you want to, like, you know, speed it up a little bit? And you're like, oh boy, I don't want to, like, end it quickly. Like, let's slow things down a little bit. Let's vision something else.
He says a one pump jump.
Yeah.
Listen, after Mike's little rant, I'm going C-. I'm going down. I'm going down a little bit.
Oh God, Kyle. My God. Yeah, listen to the Kyle Steele show to get takes quite like that. Good God.
I think the card delivered for what it was.
Yeah.
For what it was, it delivered, and it was a fun card. It's just if you're gonna have that kind of marquee fight at the top, then we have got to do a better job with the rest of the card on paper.
Right. You can't downgrade a performance-based grade on what the card looks like on paper.
Mike, I just did.
Terrible. All right, we're gonna switch gears here and do something different. Maybe Kyle will have a different answer. We're no more grades for Kyle Steele. So, you know, like, you know, when you're in high school and you have the yearbooks, you have superlatives, like, you know, those kinds of things, like best thing, whatever. So we're gonna do that based on UFC 246. So here's Kyle. I think you need to redeem yourself here. So I want to start with you. Okay. Let's have some fun with this. Outside of Conor McGregor and what he did, okay, who's your most likely to succeed coming out of UFC 246?
Ooh, man, I want to say like a Brian Kelleher, because I feel like at some point it's just all gonna come together. But I know it's not. I don't know what's going on with that guy. He's just one of those. He'll win. He'll lose when there's nothing on the line, and then he'll win when something is on the line. So I don't know. I just feel like he's not going to be able to hit it. Most likely to succeed. Well, it's not Kammer. Boy. And it's not Modafferi, because I think we know exactly what she is, and I don't think this happens all the time. Most likely to succeed. Again, this is why I don't like the card. Like, Olenek won.
It's the perfect card for this question.
Holly Holm won. She ain't going anywhere. Like, I'm going through the main card. Diego Ferreira won. We already know what he is. Like, it's a weird card. You had the prospects lose. You had Osborne lose. Kammer won, but he wasn't much of anything. I guess the only person I can think of is Askar Askarov. That's the only person I could think actually has something at stake. But again, this is why I gave it a low grade, because nothing's getting my juices flowing about the future with this card.
Drake, save this segment.
Here we are. You know, I think that Carlos Diego Ferreira, I think he's got a future. Okay, he might not ever be the champion, but I think he can hit maybe right outside the top 5. I think he can get up there. He's been really impressive to me. I mean, I don't think that this one was the most impressive. It was how he utilized his game plan to perfection. I mean, he did exactly what you need to do to beat Pettis, and he had really no trouble doing it. And I was really impressed with how he handled Hobylov. I think that was one of his more recent opponents. Was able to handle his grappling very well too. I mean, he's been on fire, I think. So I think that he's got some good potential. Askarov, obviously, he's got probably the quickest, most realistic path to a title shot out of everybody who just won, excluding Connor. And Holly Holm, even if she wins or loses. So, I mean, Askarov in the flyweight division, that's probably the right answer, no matter what, if you look at everything. But I think that CDF, he's going to be my pick. I really like what I've seen from him.
Craig, what about you? I'm sure you have some history in this in your yearbook days as well.
Yearbook superlatives. Debate team champion. So there was one of those things that had to do with me, and that was 8 years ago. My yearbook quote, and this is a long story, but I'll keep it short, was, "You were a true wizard of AutoCAD." I had a teacher in the AutoCAD class that said that to me. He was a weird guy. In biology, we did the swab test where you grow stuff in a petri dish, and out of the entire school, his keyboard was the dirtiest thing in our high school. If I'm looking at this card, I looked at 4 fights that had possible title implications. Your main event, your co-main event, Macy Barber, Roxanne Modafferi, Askarov, and Tim Elliott. And the only one to me that delivered, and I actually believe after, this guy could go on to a chance at a title in the somewhat near future, is probably Askarov. I mean, flyweight's on the up and up, and he put together another good performance. And we saw from his debut in a draw against Brandon Moreno, who I believe is going to be the champ by the end of 2020, that Askarov could really hang in there with some of the best in the division.
I'd love to see old tapes of Craig Allen debating against like St. Francis High School and him calling his opponent a dingus and things like that. That'd just be absolutely tremendous. To me, I think it's got to be Sodiq Yusuff because I think what we learned from him is he's still got a ways to go before he's in that title discussion, but man, is he talented. I mean, he had some troubles in that third round. Feely took over a bit there, but it was a little too late for him. I had no issue with the decision. I thought Sodiq won that first round. I mean, Feely had his moments, but I still thought Yusuff won that first round, and that was a pretty tough test, man. Feely is no joke, and my honorable mention, Askarov and Diego Ferreira. Good Lord, he looked fantastic submitting Anthony Pettis. We'll do one more before we go to break. Unsung hero of UFC 246. Who's not getting enough shine this week, Drake?
I don't think Roxy ever gets enough shine, all right? Even though this was a fight that she should not have been such a big underdog on, I think that she's got to be the one. Just because, I mean, everybody looks at her and they're like, what? This person fights? Like, she should be, I don't know, teaching preschoolers or something. So I think that she's the one who you got to put some respect on her name finally, okay? She just beat, a very legit prospect who's been knocking out everybody. I mean, she did the same thing with Antonina Shevchenko, who was another one she shouldn't have been an underdog for. Antonina was coming in, was supposed to, knee her face off in the clinch. As she wins again, I just think, come on, can we stop? Can we stop now? Let's just if we're going to do the odds, make them really close. If you don't want her to be favorite, but she's earned this spot. She's one of the best flyweights in the world. No matter what you want to say, it's just facts, okay?
Yeah, it's Roxy for me, too. I mean, what a performance on Saturday. She beating Macy Barber, biggest dog on the card. Yeah, you can throw out the Macy got hurt excuse all you want, but I mean, Roxy smashed her, busted her open, made her bleed her own blood. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was a crazy performance. And I'm convinced in the third round, I was actually texting back and forth with a fellow fighter in that division during that fight because I had interviewed her right before that. And I was like, Roxy's talking to her in the third round, but I think she's saying, like, I'm so sorry. Elbow. I'm really sorry for that elbow, too. Like, that's just how special Roxy is. And whoever her strength and conditioning coach is, kudos, because Roxy looked huge. She looked fired up. She looked jacked. It was the best physically we've ever seen Roxanne Modafferi look. So good on her. Maybe she just needs to keep fighting these prospects and taking them out. Craig, what do you think?
Who's the big winner here? Underdog, big winner? It's a guy who threw out the quote, "Step back, gather yourself." The man's got over 50 fights in his career, for crying out loud. You know how to fight. We've seen you. It's Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith is my unsung hero for the weekend. MMA fans absolutely love him. Good on ESPN for having him on the card, Mike. Back to you.
We're going to take our final break of the show. Lots to discuss. Our buy-sell segment coming up next on Off the Cuff. All right, welcome back to Off the Cuff. Thanks for listening, subscribing to the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, wherever you find your podcast. Soon we'll be on YouTube at some point with the show, but thank you all very much. We really appreciate that. It's time for the buy-sell segment. No more commercial breaks. We're going till the very end, till they kick us off the air, and that's that. So let's get into it. Lots of interesting questions. We got some on Twitter. I got some via the email. Craig, we're going to start with this. Buy or sell the Conor Khabib 2. Should that happen, will be as big as Dana White thinks it will be.
I believe every single thing that Dana White has ever said. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's tough. I mean, you have to look at the timeline, and everybody's counting out Tony Ferguson, and then B, all the hipsters on Twitter are like, hey, everybody's counting out Tony Ferguson. He's a cool pick. I'm going to count out Tony Ferguson. I think he's the only person at lightweight that has a realistic chance of beating Khabib. But again, I thought that 2 or 3 years ago. Do I think that in 2020? Maybe not. I'm going to have to really go back and watch a lot of fight tape. But I could see it happening. I think the rematch is next.
We're throwing it out in the universe like it is going to happen. Will it be as big as Dana White thinks it will be?
Yeah, it will be. Because you got this docile Conor, and now the casual fans are back into it. So are we going to get that, or are we going to get bad boy Conor? And the one other thing I want to say, does Conor McGregor fight again in 2020? They're just allegations right now. There's things that are going through the courts, and we can't talk about them due to Irish law. So there's a lot of mystery. But if something kind of unfolds this spring, this summer, maybe we don't see him back. So you always have to keep that in the back of your mind and put your tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, unequivocally. This will be bigger than the last one. I think it would be absolutely massive. The only concern would be if Conor, say, does fight again this year, which I do think he will. In fact, I think he takes a fight before Khabib. I don't think his next fight is Khabib, which I don't think is super smart. I think he should wait. Because here's the problem is if he fight Masvidal or Gaethje, I don't think he fights Diaz. I think it's either Gaethje or he fights Masvidal with like this real slight chance he fights Usman, but I don't think that happens. But I would say most likely Masvidal. Those are fights that he can very easily lose, especially Masvidal. Second to that being if he fights Usman or something. Gaethje should be able to win that. But if he loses one of those fights, now we're kind of back to square one with building the shine back up to fight Khabib. You can't fight Khabib off of a loss. Even with his name, I don't think they can really sell that. So if he does fight again, he's got to win. So I think he should just wait, see what the results are. If Ferguson wins, even better, because then I think he can get in there. I think he can beat Ferguson, and then now you have the rematch where Conor has the belt,
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's just, because, there's still people, the excuses are out there. Conor's doing, my foot was broken, I wasn't as dedicated, I was drinking, all this stuff is out there. So people really believe the fight will be a whole lot different than it was the first time, which maybe it will be, but, it's hard to imagine, in my opinion. But, it would be pretty massive, especially, I think that this fight that Conor just had helped so much. It doesn't really matter what Khabib does as long as he wins. He's going to be the rival, the big Russian enemy guy, the big bad guy. So I think that, it'll be big no matter what. I think that most Conor fights from here on out are going to be a little bit bigger just because it's like, oh, there's that story of him kind of coming back now. So, I think that it's hard to imagine it not being bigger than the second, if not at the same level. I don't think it's going to be any lower anyway.
I think it can be. It just depends on how it's laid out. I think Conor has to win one more. I don't think you could just go right into it. I think Conor needs to win one more. I think most people realize, especially in the hardcore level, you'll probably have the casuals all sold, but to get the hardcore fans excited, you need more of a sample size. Most people expected Conor to go in there and finish Cerrone in the first round. I don't think many people expected him to finish him in 40 seconds, in the way he did it. But I still think you need one more win. If he goes in there and fights a Gaethje, he may lose, but he still needs those fights where everybody doubts him. He hasn't had that. He needs that, and I think that's why the Khabib fight could be really interesting because Conor with the back against the wall and everybody doubting him is a very dangerous Conor McGregor. Craig, you know what? I'm going to go back to you to start this question because you didn't get a chance to answer this on Between the Links. Bellator and the UFC going head-to-head on Saturday. Buy or sell, Bellator is bringing the better card into this weekend.
So I'm glad that you asked me this question because I was very excited for this question. Bellator has a better card overall. Bellator, the only issue I have with it, and I want to bring this up, is the fact that it's very difficult if you're a casual MMA fan to find the Bellator prelims. And actually, one of my good coworkers, good friends at work, asked me, he goes, you know that Bellator, should I watch that? And I said, yeah, you should, because the main card that's on Paramount, maybe it's on tape delay, but you're going to recognize a couple of those names. You're going to see the Rampages or the Fedors or whoever, and it might get you hooked. But if you actually look at the prelims, that's where the magic happens. And we brought up some of the names in between the links, but Curtis Millender going back to Bellator, taking on Moses Murrieta. Then you have Adel Al-Tamimi that they've sold before as kind of this guy that they've really backed, and he's fought at quite a few different locations, taking on AJ Agazarm, the Nick Diaz prospect, Daniel Carey, of course, with his good win in his last fight, taking on Aaron Pico, and so on and so forth, all the way through to the fact that on your main card, you have Mr. 720 spin punch Raymond Daniels at 1-1, and everybody's excited about that. Sergio Pettis, Archuleta Corrales. There's so many good fights on this one where Rowley's just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, Rowley's kind of like when you show up at a car rental spot and instead of a Kia Rio, they give you a Jeep Grand Cherokee. Yeah, Jeep Grand Cherokee's pretty cool, but it's nothing special. It's no red Mustang.
Yeah, I'll buy it. Just because of Cyborg. I mean, it's kind of the same. It's not the same. Similar argument to why this card, I kind of jokingly gave it a C. I realized that 246 was better than a C. I'm just mad that they hinged so much on one fight. But that's ultimately what Bellator's doing here. But they actually have some stuff going down in the main card. Better than even what 246 had. The fight isn't as big as Conor, but you know what I mean? There's actually some other stuff on the main card that interests me. So, yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, Bellator. That's weird, but yeah, Bellator.
Drake, you'll be there, so obviously you'll be focused on Bellator, but looking at him on paper, let's say you're not going to be there. Who is the better show on paper, in your opinion?
I think it's still definitely Bellator anyway. I mean, just looking down the UFC card, that Blades at Dos Santos main event, I think that's a really fun one. Very great stylistic fight. Dos Anjos versus Chiesa is kind of like, I'll watch it. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be excited for it, interested in it. I think there could have been different fights made. And I think we talked about it last week, but if that Sanhagen-Edgar one was still on here, then, that would really help this one out a lot. But even then, I just think that there's like so much depth to this Bellator one. And I mean, it's literally a bigger card. There's more fights on it, so that kind of helps. But I mean, there's a title fight, there's the tournament fight, Sergio Pettis making his debut. Pico is back trying to not go on a 3-fight losing streak, which is crazy. There's just a lot of stories on this Bellator card where this is straight up just a fight night for the UFC. Like, that's what it is, cut and dry. Yeah, I just think there's a lot more overall depth to this Bellator card. A lot of moving pieces that can come out of it, I think.
I'm going to buy it. However, I will say this. The one thing that I think is going to be a big talking point on Saturday is that Bellator has been known for the slowest pacing of cards on earth. Like, just so slow. Even if they're like DAZN exclusive broadcasts, they're so slow. It's like 30 minutes between fights. Outside of the Japan card, the Japan one was paced tremendously. And if they can repeat that, I'll be very happy. But they're just so slow. And Raleigh being on ESPN Plus, that card is going to fly. It's going to just go boom, 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 boom. And I think people are going to be very satisfied at the pacing of that card. But clearly on paper, Bellator is a better card, so I'm buying that. I will be watching the UFC more intently, more so for work purposes, just because that's what I have to do on Saturday. But I will be going back and watching the Bellator card. It'll be a late night on Saturday. This is a question from Mr. Mike Pendleton on Twitter. And buy or sell, Drake, that this was a good week for MMA media at UFC 246. Although Mike Pendleton's actual question was, although the UFC needs to be on the bigger platforms such as ESPN, do they have to be on certain talent that hurt the credibility of those who actually cover MMA? So what I'm saying is, was this a good week for MMA media as a whole and for who is covering the UFC? I assume Mike's talking about the Robbie Fox incident.
Come on, Mike, do some better wording there. Pendleton, not Heck.
I think it's auto. I think it was an autocorrect issue.
Yeah. I think overall it was a fantastic week for the media if you think about it. I mean, they got to go hang out with Jorge Masvidal and drink his new lighter fluid, which is apparently what I've heard it tastes like. But hey, I mean, that's a cool thing. Everyone's getting the coverage, even talking to Steve-O. And then there was even after party at Connor. I mean, I think the media had a pretty good week when it comes to just enjoyment. But no, I think the coverage was great. There was a lot of exposure and everything. As for the big controversial Robbie Fox thing, that guy, I've never met him, never really interacted with him, but I don't know if we can put him in the same category as everybody else, even though he is technically in that category by getting the credentials he gets and all of that. If you really know anything about him, you kind of know what's going on there. I mean, Barstool, they're kind of, it's the comedy sports website kind of, from what I've seen, and nothing wrong with that. I love, laughing and all that. You need those kind of sites out there and those people, but, it just depends where do you like kind of, the line is blurred, I guess, is what happens when these kind of things happen. But the point with him is he's pretty much the face of the casuals kind of. He's doing a very specific thing here. He doesn't really focus on, MMA. He focuses on the big things, like Connor. That's what you get with Robbie Fox. And, can't knock him for it. Excuse me. Can't knock him for it. He's doing his thing. Is it professional, really? I mean, for what he's doing, yes, it is. But compared to like us, no, not at all. No, you should get kicked out of that place for sure. But yeah, it's I don't know if you can, put it into the same group, but it is. So it's a really weird thing.
Yeah, I'll buy that it was a good week overall just because of the coverage and some of the different things you got to see over the week. I still think heading out of 2019, glaring, gigantic potholes that we need to fill when it comes to the media and how things are structured at press conferences and things like that. I'll talk a little bit more about that on Between the Links and some other places that I've done stuff heading into the fight week. But the Robbie Fox thing, here's a point I'm going to make quickly that I said on Between the Links, if you guys haven't listened to it yet. Robbie Fox has a very close relationship with Dana White. Robbie Fox has a very close relationship with the UFC. Barstool brings them new viewers, brings them new eyes. Who's to say? And we know this is a rule. We've all been credentialed at some point. There's a rule that says, like, you cannot be on Media Row and cheering for fighters. Like, you cannot be biased. Like, that's a rule. But who's to say that Robbie Fox didn't reach out to Dana White and be like, dude, we're cool. I'm doing this thing. Are you okay with it? And if Dana gives him the okay, then is he wrong? Is he? I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question, but I don't have a huge problem with it. I understand why some media members have a problem with it. I understand why is Josh Gross not credentialed, but Robbie Fox is. I understand that argument. I understand there's young podcasters out there who've put out 6 podcasts and feel like they should be on ESPN tomorrow that aren't credentialed, and they're pissed about it too. Like, this is their way to sneak in through the door. I understand that as well, but I think you have to understand, to Drake's point, who he is and the gimmick that he's trying to portray. That's all.
So I had one answer on Between the Links, and I'm going to kind of expand on it and change it a little bit. So Robbie Fox, I think he's great for the sport. Brings eyes to it. That's what we all need. That's great. But when you're a credentialed media member at a UFC event, when you're asking questions to Dana White and Conor McGregor, you don't have to go ahead and start your question by saying, man, it's great to see you here. You're making so much money for Las Vegas. You're making so much money for all of us. This is great. What's it like to make money for all of us? That's not a good question. And I understand at press conferences, the point isn't like a UFC press conference is an opportunity for the UFC to market, and you're doing the marketing for them. That's the whole point of it. So asking the tough questions like Morgan Campbell tried to, it's not going to happen. They're going to shut it down. I wasn't surprised that the fans booed it. I know a lot of people over on Twitter and social media wanted to see the tough questions asked, and it was an opportunity, but it just didn't materialize. Overall, I don't think it was a total negative. But with Robbie from Barstool, you have to understand, he's not a part of the MMA Journalists Association. He's not a true MMA journalist. He's not going out there and asking those tough questions. He's going to do more fluff pieces and more more content pieces to get views for Barstool. So you can't take them incredibly seriously. And I mentioned it before. There's almost three factions right now in MMA media. There's those that are out there to get the likes and to get the clicks and the Barstool route. Then there's the people that are out there that are just nagging and complaining about every single thing that they can, and they get views out of it. And then there's the people that actually take it serious, and, you know, you can have a laugh every now and again like we're having on here, but at the end of the day, it's a serious business, and you're treating it as such. And it's kind of, 2020 is kind of, we're seeing more of a separation between those three groups, from what I've seen anyway.
I think here's the thing. There's no money in MMA media. There's just nothing there. There's not a lot of money in MMA, period. You know, the UFC is leaps and bounds better than the other organizations as far as the money that they've brought in, and you have fighters making $10,000 to fight on a UFC card, and they are the number one promotion, and it's really not even close. So there's no money in it. So when you have something that exists with no money, you're not going to attract the best of the best. You're just not. There are people who are in MMA media who are very, very good, but ultimately they can't go to every card. You can't clone those people and have them everywhere. So it just, you're kind of going to get what you're going to get, and complaining about it. It's not. Find ways to get money. If you can find ways to get money into the sport, and you can find ways to get money to MMA media, you're going to get a better product, right? It's just human nature. The other thing is, like, so I've only done one event. I did Bellator 175 with Keith, MMA Takeover, you know, back when Keith started his site up. I went to that. I might have been the only person who didn't take their picture with all the fighters. I mean, legitimately. And there were big names that were there because it was a big card. It was Rampage and King Mo. It was a big card. It was in Chicago. I might have been, I swear to God, might have been the only person that didn't take pictures with everybody. Like during the event, like leaning over, taking pictures, fighters walking out, do whatever, like, which to me is incredibly unprofessional, which is why I didn't do it. I was there to do a job, so that's what I did. And I wanted to treat it as such, but I didn't get paid to do it. You know what I mean? Of course. Not that I would want to anyway, but I didn't get paid to do it. I didn't whatever. Like I chose to be professional because that's what you're supposed to do. But ultimately, you can't expect that from everybody when there's no money to be there. So we have to find ways to bring that money, and it goes full circle. You bring money to the sport through guys like Robbie, who's doing his little antics for Barstool. Barstool is about as big, if not bigger, than ESPN some days. Outside of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, is my absolute favorite podcast network, is Barstool. I love Barstool. So, it's what are you going to do, man? I mean, they had a good week because it was a big card and nothing crazy happened. You know what I mean? There was nothing like real bad that happened. I mean, there wasn't the guy that confused. Who did he confuse for Robbie Lawler? I don't remember what was it? He confused somebody for Robbie Lawler. Dana White goes, he goes, do you think that's Robbie?
Oh my God.
Oh, that was so
Do you remember
funny.
that one? I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was, but anyway, there was nothing like that took place. So whatever, they did all right.
And there were Dana said there was 180 people, media members, which that sounds like, maybe
That's a
some days.
lot. That's a lot more than you have.
At UFC Moncton, let's put this into perspective. There were three. There was Jay Anderson, myself, and Mike Bond. 3. And that's who covered it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how Albany was. That was the first UFC event I ever covered. It was me, Matt Erickson from Junkie, and that was it. And some local media members. That was literally all it was. We're going to try to get 2 more in. This next question comes from John Franklin. So,
Uh-oh.
When it's all said and done, who will have the best MMA career? Macy Barber, Sodiq Yusuff, or Ode Osborne? So, based on Saturday, I'll say Yusuff is at the top of the list because he was the only one of those 3 to get a win. So, Craig, buy or sell that Sodiq Yusuff will have a better overall career than Macy Barber and or Ode Osborne?
If we're defining a better career as a championship, and Macy Barber's only 21 years old, and Valentina Shevchenko's window is probably, 10 years? So she's a champ for 10 years. That makes Macy Barber 31. She's still got a shot. So you're
saying
I'm going to go with
there's a
Macy
chance.
Barber. Ode Osborne is crafty, but I can see how Brian Kelleher beat him. And I don't know if he's going to be able to kick it with the top guys in his weight class. And Sadiq Youssef is really, really good, but I'm going to buy on Macy Barber. It's all dependent on that ACL injury that the Magic Doctor saw, and I know it was a complete ACL tear, so it's going to be a long road to recovery there. I mean, I know even with like just tearing all the ligaments in my knee this fall, it took a good 3 or 4 months to actually feel normal to walk again. I didn't require surgery, so for her it's going to be way worse. But I'll still buy Macy Barber.
All right, I'll do this quickly. I'll buy. I think Macy will fight for a title first before the other two, but I think Sadiq Youssef's gonna have the better overall career of those 3 fighters. Drake?
I am buying Youssef over Barber. Here's the thing the reason I pick Youssef over Barber is because I think, well, the injury doesn't help, at this stage. And I think that one day we're going to see Macy at bantamweight, and she's going to be outsized, and it's just going to kind of throw everything off. She's going to try to go back down to flyweight. She's going to be one of those fighters who ends up having the weight issues and is going back and forth, which isn't going to help. So I think she's just going to kind of get lost in that shuffle at some point. There's still going to be years of success to be had, but ultimately, I don't know. I think that once the time comes where it's like, okay, maybe something can really happen here, then the way things going to happen, and she'll be at bantamweight and it's going to ruin it. As for Youssef, I don't know if I could see him being champion just yet, but definitely the potential is all there. Haven't seen enough of Osborne to really give a fair assessment on him, but yeah, I think Youssef, he can be a guy who could be a solid top 10 guy, top 5 maybe, just depending on where that goes. But yeah, I would take Youssef. By Youssef.
Kyle, you get the final word here.
I think that Macy Barber will have more success numbers wise as far as like how long she spends in the top 10 or top 5 or gets maybe to the championship faster, whatever it is. But I think Sadiq Youssef will mean more, if that makes sense. It'll have more value, his successes. The only reason why I say Macy Barber is just because the volatile nature of women's MMA. It changes pretty quickly. It tends to not be nearly as deep. So I think she'll have more success numbers wise if you're looking at rankings and that kind of stuff. But I think Youssef will have the more meaningful, career.
There you have it, and that's how we're going to end the show. We have a couple more we could have gotten to, but we have run out of time here on the second episode of Off the Cuff. Big shout out to everyone who submitted questions. Continue to do so via Twitter. Follow me at MikeHack_JR. You can follow these guys as well. I'll put it on the description because we got to go. So for Kyle, Craig, Drake, I am Mike Hack. We'll see you back next week as we go back and do things off the cuff here on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network.